I still remember the moment every conversation in that crowded restaurant suddenly went silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward the entrance, followed by muffled laughter that people thought I couldn't hear. My closest co-workers exchanged amused glances, clearly expecting me to stand up, make an excuse, and walk away. They believed they had created the perfect joke at someone else's expense. But what happened next wasn't what anyone expected, and before the evening ended, even the people who had laughed the loudest were wiping tears from their eyes. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness is stronger than cruelty and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel, Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still exists. For years, I had been known around the office as the quiet accountant who avoided gossip and stayed away from drama. I wasn't the funniest person or the most confident, but I believed people deserved respect whether anyone was watching or not. Unfortunately, not everyone around me shared that belief. My co-workers often entertained themselves by making jokes about strangers, appearances, or anyone who seemed different. I usually ignored them, hoping one day they would grow out of that childish behavior. One Friday afternoon they insisted I join them for dinner after work. They claimed they had arranged a surprise blind date because I had been single for too long. I resisted at first, but they insisted so passionately that I finally agreed, believing they genuinely wanted to help me meet someone special. Looking back, I should have noticed the hidden smiles and whispered conversations that followed every time they looked in my direction. The restaurant was elegant, filled with soft music and glowing lights reflecting across polished wooden tables. Everything looked perfect until the front doors opened. A woman walked inside wearing a beautiful navy blue dress, her long brown hair resting gently across her shoulders. She was noticeably overweight, and before she even reached our table, I could hear several people around us trying to suppress laughter. My co-workers exchanged victorious looks, convinced their prank had succeeded. She walked carefully toward me, already carrying the painful expression of someone who had experienced this kind of humiliation many times before. Although she tried to smile politely, I could see fear behind her eyes. She expected rejection before I had even spoken a single word. That realization broke my heart more than anything else happening in the room. Instead of walking away, I stood up immediately. I smiled warmly, pulled out her chair, thanked her for coming, and introduced myself with genuine respect. The surprise on her face lasted only a second before tears quietly filled her eyes. The laughter around us disappeared almost instantly. People who had expected a cruel scene suddenly found themselves watching something completely different. As dinner began, I learned her name was Emily. She worked as a children's librarian and spent weekends reading stories to kids in hospitals. She loved painting landscapes, rescuing abandoned animals, and baking desserts for elderly neighbors who lived alone. Every sentence she spoke revealed another beautiful part of her character. Meanwhile, I couldn't help wondering how many people had overlooked such an incredible human being simply because of her appearance. Emily eventually admitted that she almost didn't come. She had experienced cruel blind dates before where people laughed, secretly filmed her, or pretended to receive emergency phone calls just to leave. She confessed that every invitation now felt like another possible trap. Hearing those words made me realize that invisible scars often hurt far longer than physical ones. The longer we talked, the less I noticed anything except her kindness, intelligence, and gentle sense of humor. Hours seemed to disappear. We laughed about childhood memories, embarrassing school moments, and our dreams for the future. For the first time in months, I completely forgot about my phone, my work, and everyone else in the restaurant. Across the room, however, my co-workers looked increasingly uncomfortable. Their prank had completely failed. Instead of creating an embarrassing spectacle, they were witnessing two strangers enjoying an honest conversation built on mutual respect. Near the end of dinner, one coworker finally approached our table with an awkward smile and admitted that the entire blind date had been arranged as a joke. He expected everyone nearby to laugh again. Instead, complete silence filled the room. Emily lowered her eyes, clearly believing everything we had shared had been meaningless. Before she could stand up and leave, I gently reached across the table and held her hand. I calmly told everyone that the only embarrassing thing happening that night was watching adults treat another human being as entertainment. I explained that beauty fades with time, careers can disappear overnight, but character remains long after everything else changes. I thanked Emily for giving me one of the most enjoyable evenings I had experienced in years. Then I apologized, not because of anything she had done, but because she had been forced to endure such unnecessary cruelty simply to satisfy someone else's idea of humor. Something remarkable happened next. One elderly couple sitting nearby stood and began applauding. Another table joined them. Within moments, nearly the entire restaurant was clapping. Several people openly cried. Even some of my co-workers lowered their heads in shame, unable to meet either of our eyes. The restaurant manager quietly walked over and informed us that our dinner had been fully paid for by anonymous guests who wanted to support what they had witnessed. It wasn't about free food. It was about seeing humanity choose kindness over cruelty. Emily smiled through tears unlike any smile I had ever seen. It wasn't the smile of someone who had finally been complimented. It was the smile of someone who had finally been seen. Over the following weeks, we continued meeting. We visited museums, walked through quiet parks, volunteered together at an animal shelter, and spent long evenings talking beneath open skies. Every day I discovered another reason to admire her. She taught me patience, generosity, and the quiet strength required to remain kind after years of being judged unfairly. She also inspired changes within my own workplace. Word about that evening spread throughout the company. Management eventually organized workshops about respect, inclusion, and workplace bullying. Several co-workers personally apologized to Emily and admitted they had never truly considered the damage casual jokes could cause. While apologies couldn't erase old wounds, they marked the beginning of genuine change. Months later, Emily organized a charity event at the children's library where hundreds of families attended. Watching children surround her with laughter reminded me that the world becomes brighter because of people like her, people whose hearts remain gentle despite everything life has thrown at them. Looking back now, I realize that Blind Date didn't reveal anything about Emily. It revealed the character of everyone else in the room. Some people chose mockery. Others chose silence. But kindness only required one simple decision, and that single choice transformed an evening meant for humiliation into a memory that changed countless lives. I often think about how many extraordinary people we pass every day without ever taking the time to know them. Society spends so much energy judging appearances that it sometimes forgets the greatest beauty cannot be measured by a mirror or a number on a scale. True beauty appears in compassion, courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to love despite being hurt before. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps these messages of hope reach people who may desperately need them today. Before this story ends, please leave a comment answering one simple question. Have you ever witnessed a moment where kindness completely changed someone's life? As we left that restaurant together hand in hand, I realized my co-workers believed they had arranged the worst night of my life. Instead, they unknowingly introduced me to one of the most remarkable people I would ever meet. Sometimes life hides its greatest blessings inside moments that first appear painful. And when we choose compassion instead of judgment, we don't just change someone else's story, we transform our own forever.